It is a disgrace and disrespect
Tiffany,
to call that a success.
The immigration in the
How
last
is it a
20
success
years.
that they shot a nurse in the back and a mother in the
No
face?
one is.
Oh, it was a success. It was a success for sure. We'll get into it. Just run the numbers. No emotion. I'm Steve Loomis with Walking That Mile. So we're talking about Metro Surge in the Twin Cities, the immigration enforcement action that went on from December through February. I think it's wrapped up or completely wrapped up or going to be completely wrapped up now soon. And in that amount of time, they arrested a bunch of illegal aliens. Yep, there was some use of force situations that happened, but we'll get into the numbers here in just a second. I just want to run this full clip here. This is Joe Borelli and Tiffany Cross debating on CNN.
It is a disgrace and disrespect
Tiffany,
to call that a success.
The immigration laws have not changed in the last 10 years, in the
How is
last
it a
20
success
years.
that they shot a nurse in the back and a mother in the
No
face?
one is saying. You're putting
That's
words in my mouth.
disrespect.
Stop
You
putting
said this
words in
was
my
a
mouth.
success.
I said the
Tom
operation
Homan said,
was a
I'm not gonna
success.
say they didn't do anything wrong.
They reestablished the fact that,
You all
that
feed from the
immigration and
same
customs
trough.
enforcement can enforce immigration law. They reestablished that fact. That happened.
Look
it
what
is
names
unfortunate.
Nicole
It's a
is family
tragedy.
in the face
There's
and
an
tell her it's a
investigation
success.
going on with those
Look
shootings.
Alex
There
Preddy's
ought to
mother
be.
in the face
There ought
and
to
tell
be.
her that her son getting murdered by the state was a success.
No one is
Look
saying
yourself in the mirror
shooting is a
tonight
success.
and tell
No one-
yourself it was a success.
When the hell did I say someone getting shot in a police operation? is a
At the
success?
beginning of the
No,
show.
you
Let's
made
run
that
back
up.
to
hold
Steve.
on. I think we can, I think she's raising an important question.
So that was Tiffany Cross. She used to work for MSNBC. I think she got let go in like 2021. I think for kind of the behavior that you saw displayed there. That was Joe Borelli debating her. Joe was part of the New York City Council, I think, from about 2015 through 2021, and then I think he was in some other area right in New York there too, and now he is more of a lobbyist, I believe. Trump supporter, Republican. Obviously, you can see where Tiffany Cross is coming from there, and then of course it's Abby Phillips' show. Abby Phillips at the end kind of coming in to save Tiffany, since she's just going down the emotional path as far as the two people losing their lives in this thing. But Joe brings up a good point when he can talk, that one of the successes was that they showed that they can enforce immigration again. ICE doesn't back down. And so even though the Democrats, the liberals in Minnesota were really pushing people to get out and obstruct justice, they had these signal chats that members of the government, liberal members of the government, are alleged to have been part of, as far as setting up these events where they can obstruct ICE, while they could follow the cars that they believe had ICE agents in them. Even with all of that, ICE showed that they could enforce immigration law and protect themselves. I think a lot of people, including myself, thought this was going to be riots similar to 2020, and they didn't turn out to be anything like that, because ICE doesn't back down. They use force to protect themselves. And I don't believe there were any significant injuries to ICE agents. I might be wrong there, but nothing that I've seen was significant. They were, they were assaulted. I mean, they were bloodied. They had snowballs thrown at them. They had frozen water bottles thrown at them, all of that stuff. They were working in some really difficult conditions, but again, they were allowed to use force and protect themselves, unlike what we saw in 2020, where the cops were told to stand back, stand down, and just let the city burn. So that was one big success here, was that it didn't get so out of control because they could use force, they could protect themselves, and they showed that to the people that they weren't going to back down, that they weren't going to allow them to go crazy. The next thing was that they arrested about 4,000 illegal immigrants, even in the harsh conditions that they were working in, even with constantly having people blow whistles and obstruct them, get in their face, with all the noise and the commotion, allow any illegal aliens in the area to potentially escape justice because of that. But even with all that, they arrested 4,000 illegal aliens in this surge. Now, the emotional part that Tiffany Cross was bringing up was that 2 people lost their lives and 3 people were shot, and I think 1 more person was shot at. He was using a car to try and run over ICE agents, and he was shot at. He was not hit. But Renee Good was shot and killed. She was shot and killed on January 7th. And then on January 14th was this disputed situation where a Venezuelan national, the ICE agent at the time said that he was being assaulted with a shovel and broom handle or something like that, that it was 2 against 1, and he ended up shooting one of the assailants who he was allegedly running down in the leg. Now that man, Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, I don't exactly know how to pronounce it, he lived, but he was shot in the leg. So that is considered, deadly force, of course. And then January 24th was Alex Preddy. Now, I'm not here to debate right now whether these were justified or not, okay? I'll tell you that I think the Renee Good shooting will be considered justified. I think the Alex Preddy case is pretty complicated. So, I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts in that one, a lot of agents. He did have a gun that they removed from him. Did the gun go off? There were a lot of things in that. I haven't looked very deep into that one, but I think that's going to be a lot of an investigation to figure out if any of it was justified, if all of it was justified, if some of it was justified. I don't know. And then the Venezuelan who was shot in the leg, that initially sounded like self-defense, and now they dropped the charges against them as far as assaulting the officers. The officers have been put on leave. There's evidence that has come out that potentially they fabricated, they made up the story. The ICE agents made up the story, or, didn't tell all of what actually happened. So, from the FBI data, there are approximately 10 million arrests. I'm just going to do, again, this is no emotion here. This is just the numbers and the facts. 10 million arrests every year. In that 10 million arrests, there are between 1,200 and 1,900 approximately deadly uses of force that result in a fatality or people dying in custody. Okay, when you break those numbers down, there's approximately 1 deadly use of force every 3,000 to 5,000 arrests. Again, that's a big spread, but there's a lot of factors going on here. So, and that's not that's not a fatal use of force. That is deadly use of force. Some people die, some people would live through that. So, again, 1 in between 3,000 and 5,000 arrests. Now we're talking about 4,000 arrests here. 4,000 illegal aliens were arrested. And so you're right in the ballpark of the stats, you know. This isn't egregious as far as the number of people who were shot, the number of people who were killed. Loss of life is tragic. Use of force is not pretty. It's never pretty. If you're trying to take somebody into custody and they resist, and you have a justified reason, if you have probable cause for arrest, and you end up getting in a tussle, people get scraped up, people, break bones, that they get cuts and bruises and knocked out and all that kind of stuff. Use of force is not pretty. So, this is right in the numbers as far as the stats go. And the biggest thing to look at is that there were 4,000 arrests of illegal aliens. Okay? People here, undocumented, didn't have a right to be here, came into this country illegally, but 2 of the 3 people shot were not initially subject to arrest. They were obstructing. They were putting themselves in the way. They were intentionally getting in the way. They were intentionally antagonizing the ICE officers as they were trying to do their jobs. There were hundreds and sometimes thousands of them out there obstructing, blowing whistles, throwing snowballs, again, throwing objects at these ICE agents. So these 2 people weren't initially even subject to arrest. So they weren't shot in being taken into custody or attempted to be taken into custody. They were just obstructing justice to the point where force was used on them and 2 people died. So can you imagine, if they hadn't done that, if they hadn't gotten in the way, if everybody stayed out of the way and let them do their jobs, if the government in Minnesota didn't push this and encourage people to get out there and get in the way of ICE. Keith Ellison is on record saying, put your bodies out there, put your bodies on the line for these illegal aliens. He's telling his constituents to put your bodies in the way, get yourself into trouble, potentially. And 2 people died because they followed that advice. So can you imagine if these people didn't get in the way? If Renee Good just went home after dropping her kid off and Alex Pretty stayed home? Not only would they have arrested 4,000 illegal aliens, they would have used force, in this case, on 1 that sounds like it was a bogus thing anyway. It was an improper use of force. It was, there's something going on there with this Venezuelan that is not above board. And that happens too. I mean, ICE agents, law enforcement were from the population. We're a flawed group too. There are always going to be people who do the wrong things or mistakes are just made. So there would have been 1 person potentially shot in the leg. And these 2 lives would not have been lost. And likely, ICE would have been able to arrest even more illegal aliens if the obstruction that was occurring didn't occur. So the numbers, yes, Operation Metro Surge was a success. No law enforcement officers that I know of were terribly, I mean, yes, now that I think about it, somebody got their finger bit off. So, I mean, there were casualties there too. I'm sure people got hit in the head with things, got their bell rung, that kind of stuff. No major injuries that I know of, but losing a finger is major, so I take that back. Besides that, there were no other agents that I know of who were severely injured, and 4,000 illegal aliens were arrested. And like Joe said, they proved that we can enforce immigration now again. We can do that. We've already closed down the border. We can enforce this. We can start coming after those people, more and more the people who are here illegally. So absolutely, this was a success for sure. That's all I've got. Steve Loomis, Walking That Mile.